Never before in the history of podcasts has there been a screen presence so commanding, so powerful, so deadly.
I don't know. I'm not so sure about this.
You've got to do something every minute that Shawn's not on the air. We're losing money.
If you could just get that overactive imagination of yours to work for you instead of against you, maybe you could...
This means something. This is important.
Now, I'm calling out an SOS. Save our podcast.
You asked interrogator question around my face. It's gone.
What are you doing?
That is not paid for by them. That is paid for by the people of Detroit.
You might be qualified, ML.
I'm not qualified for this job.
Let me tell you something. You want to go right now? Okay? You want to go right now, Al?
Hey kids, it's your old pal ML Elric back once again with the Soul of Detroit, and we have an extra special show today. Our guest is Joe Spencer, who helped run WGPR TV, Channel 62, before it was CBS, back when it was the first black-owned broadcast station, TV station on the continental United States. And for those of us of a certain vintage, you may remember it from some great reruns, some cool local programming, or maybe just for the scene, which was Our Soul Train, a dance show that is legendary. And Mr. Spencer is going to talk to us about the history of the station, which has got some great events coming up this year, and what it was like to keep this thing on the air, which we appreciate as a crew that tries to cobble together a show every week. So Joe Spencer, thanks for joining us today.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
So it's great to have him here. We've had a great conversation leading up to the show, so I think there's a lot to share here. And then later on in the show, we're going to talk about this issue of guns. I know you're probably all sick of talking about guns, or maybe some of you love talking about it, or maybe you're just sick of the killing. I wrote a column for the Free Press this weekend about my thoughts. As you may know, I'm a new columnist. I don't find sharing my opinion all that comfortable. I'd much rather let the facts speak for themselves, but I felt compelled to weigh in.
Since when?
Well, I mean, in print, on the podcast. I mean, this is Chinatown, man. Okay. You say whatever you want, but different rules. But
I like the way you squinted at me as you said that, Mark.
Well, I looked at you first to make sure I had some sort of agreement.
I like it. I like it when Shawn is like one extension of my left hand.
So I'm not in the right place, right? This is, because I have to turn my neck to see you. Is that what you're saying?
So, Joe, remember when I was telling you this guy's on here to cause trouble? It's good to be validated so rapidly. But anyways, I weighed in on it partly because a lot of people have been talking about this, and because my daughter is about to become a teacher. And I've heard a lot of people talk about teachers being armed to protect themselves. Not a good idea, particularly if you're thinking about my kid.
I know that was my favorite paragraph of your column, because believe it or not, I did read it. But when you said you don't even want her shooting in an open field.
Oh yeah, and I'm someone who's very comfortable with guns. I'm actually a pretty good shot. I've fired everything from an AK-47 to a Tommy gun to a 9mm. Got no problem with guns. And I have people all the time ask me, it's like, do you have a gun? Do you have a gun? You write about powerful, dangerous people. You live in the city where police response time is
lacking.
Slow.
A fiction, yeah. And I say, no, I don't have a gun. I don't feel a need to have a gun to protect myself. The only time I would ever feel a need to kill somebody was if my family was threatened. But I also know that if a guy or a woman comes into my house with a gun and I've got a gun, because of who I am, I'm going to be the second one to draw. And the second one to draw is the first one to die. So I'd much rather try and talk my way out of it, much rather kick your ass you come through my door. And I've almost been shot a couple times when I was making some nocturnal entries to different residences owned by
sound like a euphemism
by family and what have you. So we're going to get into that a little bit later. So stick around for that. You're probably going to have to get the audio download on that, because I think we're going to be talking about after our YouTube broadcast ends. But if you want to watch the show, subscribe to the YouTube channel, ML Elric. You'll get a reminder every week when we're getting ready to go live. And if you miss a show, you can always watch the replay. But of course, the full audio down low is where you get everybody and everything that we have to offer, such as it is. And it's all made possible by our generous sponsors like Mr. Luke Nowacki of Pinnacle Wealth Strategies.
Yeah, stocks, bonds, where do you put your money? Nobody knows. So call Luke Nowacki, Pinnacle Wealth, 248-663-4748. He's going to give you rational financial advice. I was just looking at the market. It started way down. It's climbing back. Nobody can figure this out. You want a long-term strategy. Once again, call Luke, 248-663-4748. Pinnacle Wealth is his company.
And when you call Luke, he'll make it all about you, sweetheart.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through Royal Alliance Associates Inc. Member FINRA SIPC. Royal Alliance Associates Inc. is separately owned, and other entities and or marketing names, products, or services referenced here are independent of Royal Alliance Associates Inc.
That is a good man. Another guy that knows a lot about guns, too. Whatever that's worth.
Mr. Nowacki?
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. Hall Financial. We're talking about money. We're talking about finding money, trying to build wealth. Your house is probably one of the most valuable assets you have. And if you are looking to buy a house or refinance your house, our friends at Hall Financial can really help you.
Yeah, or if you need money to, say, pay off credit card debt or a student loan, or you just want to get money out of the house because it's increased in value over this past year, about on average $30,000 in the U.S., Hall Financial can get you a cash-out refinance, consolidate all your debt. If you're paying 25% for a credit card, that's insane. Consolidate it all. Give Hall Financial a try. Give them a call, 866-CALL-HALL. That's 866-CALL-HALL, or go online, callhallfirst.com.
And you can find links to their websites on our website, which is mlsoulofdetroit.com. And when you go there, make sure you let them know that ML sent you. Now, if you go to the Caju Cafe, you don't really need to let them know that I sent you, because
She'll be there.
I'm probably at the end of the bar there with the proprietor, John Rutherford. And there's always something great going on at the Caju Cafe. Great food, great events like music, live music inside and outside. Now the weather's turning great. And feather bowling, one of the few places in the United States when you can go feather bowling. What's feather bowling, you say?
What's feather bowling?
Well, that was more rhetorical. Oh. But yeah, you can find out more at cajucafe.com, and there's always something cool going on there. Usually great music. And great music is what people associate with WGPR, because it started out as a radio station. But sometime in the 70s, an opportunity arose to create a television station owned by the Masons, of all people. I mean, the origin story for WGPR television, it was the first black-owned television station in the continental United States. It was on Jefferson, and there's still a museum there. And when you hear WGPR, I think Detroit, but it actually stood for Grosse Pointe Radio, which is about as Detroit as lavender water and a feather boa. But hey, man, sometimes life is strange. Joe Spencer was a program director there, helped keep the station going. We're pleased to have him on the show. Joe, tell us a little bit about how GPR became this iconic station that it's a place that sort of transcends time.
Well, first of all, the WGPR is because the Masons originally bought WGPR FM, which was the first black-owned FM radio station in the city. And it bought it from a guy who was a Grosse Pointer, and it was actually originally located in Grosse Pointe. And so they retained the letters WGPR FM. And continued, and that was in, I think it was 1968.
Okay.
When they bought the radio station. And it really came about, the television station came about when the former WXON was on Channel 62. And they had petitioned the FCC to have their frequency changed from Channel 62 to Channel 20. And that left open a signal, which was Channel 62. And so Dr. Banks, William Banks, who was the head of the International Masons, and Ulysses Boykins, who was a PR guy, and it was one of Dr. Banks's side guys, helped supported the International Masons and so forth. They were both black Republicans, which was not so common in those days, and Dr. Banks was invited to the White House by Richard Nixon for a dinner, and they were there talking about broadcasting, and it came up with the fact that there was a license available, and they made the pitch to be able to acquire the license. And President Nixon said, yes, we're going to make it happen. And they had just nominated a fellow by the name of Benjamin Hooks, who was a minister in Detroit, but was also nominated and a member of the FCC. And so he guided them through the process, and they got the license. And they were granted a license in 1973, and they took about $3 million to build the station. So,
Joe, when did you start there? When did you start programming?
Well, my journey was a little different than most. I was working at Channel 4 when they went on there. In fact, I was a producer and director for Channel 4, and I was working with Jerry Blocker, and Jerry Blocker happened to be the first black
legendary newsman,
anchor man in this city. Okay, and he was at Channel 4, and I was directing his newscast, and he made the decision to go join Channel 62 as the first black-owned television station before it went on the air. So he helped form the programming and the news department.
Probably gave it a lot of legitimacy with potential advertisers and investors.
Absolutely. So, as a result of him going there, after they went on the air, he called me, Joe, we need your help over here, because they didn't really have a lot of people who had broadcast experience, particularly production experience, and that was my background, production, because I was a director, So I left Channel 4 about 30 days after they went on the air. That's when I joined them, and I joined their group as an executive producer, not as the program director. George White was the program director. Okay,
because getting the license is huge, and the idea is huge, and we're going to produce all this local stuff, and it's going to be great. But then reality hits, and it's like, oh boy, this is a lot hard. This is a lot more expensive, I would think. The technology is expensive. Producing local programming is pretty tough in the mid 70s. And I just wondered, how did you weather that, and how did you come up with what to put on TV to fill that kind of that mission statement of serving black people in the city of Detroit?
Well, it was a matter of real life circumstances, in that WGPR Channel 62 was an independent television station. They didn't have a network feeding it like 247
NBC or CBS.
NBC, So to fill the programming, they had to produce programming, and when they put the station together, they knew they were going to have to do it. In fact, they had some really, really ambitious
soap operas, some other stuff.
There you
which
go.
never happened because it just the funding wasn't there. But we produced a lot of local talk shows. We produced a couple of news programs. We produced a lot of programming around entertainment, gospel entertainment, regular R&B entertainment. And we also had some syndicated programming, program that had been on the networks and was in syndication. And for those who don't know what syndication is after the program has its life on the network, it goes into syndication.
It's like streaming before streaming for the kids out there, right?
Yeah. Well, and it seems like there's still stations around like that, like Channel 38, where you can watch old Hawaii 5-0, and All in the Family and all this other stuff. You guys had I Spy, Rawhide, what have you?
Oh yeah, we had a lot of those programs. What I most watched off-network program, and it wasn't actually an off-network program in the United States. Doctor Who.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Doctor Who?
Yeah, I know Doctor Who.
And I think you guys had Dark Shadows on
Dark Shadows, too.
The vampire soap opera.
That was a really big one, yeah.
I just remember the quality of the video on that, because I think it was so old. It was like, is something wrong with my set? It was really.
It was black and white for sure then.
Yeah, it was, you really had the feeling of, I'm watching something different than I get on every other channel.
Was it a struggle, or was it exciting because it's like, hey, we can kind of the Wild West?
Oh, no, it was very exciting. For me, having come from Channel 62, from Channel 4 to Channel 62, it's a little different because they weren't quite as well equipped as the NBC stations. Didn't have the people around that had all the knowledge, because most people this was their first job in broadcast.
Yeah, you get to Channel 4, you've come up through Alpena, Saginaw, Flint. You make
right, exactly.
GPR has a mission that we're going to give black folks a chance in broadcast. So you get a lot of people like, oh, this sounds great, but
it's way
coming
ahead
from
of
Channel 4, you're probably like, okay, we need to do this, do that, and somebody's like, what is that?
Well, I kind of knew what I was getting into. because I know that a couple of guys, Jerry had sent a couple of guys from the station for me to kind of tutor them, in terms of production before they went on the air. Okay. And one very, very, really sharp kid that really did well in broadcasting, Kenny Bryan, went over to Channel 50 after he finished his career at Channel 62. But, that was the thing. A lot of people came to the station that did not have experience. And we became kind of like a training ground in many ways, because the backstory of that is that the FCC back in the late 60s had required stations to begin to reflect the communities that they serve in terms of their employment. Okay, so, stations that were basically, forgive me for the term, lily white, had to now begin to bring in some African Americans. So a lot of young kids were coming out of college, didn't have any experience, and they go to the television station, they go to Channel 247, and, they get them to the interview and they ask them, well, what experience do you have? Which was kind of traditional. Usually if you came to a Channel 247, you had been like, say, Alpino or somewhere other smaller market. Yeah. And so they said, well, no, we don't have any experience. They said, go get some. So we were the stop.
Okay.
They came there, and that's where they got their initial training, you know what I mean? And, we put hundreds of people through our station that went on to stations all across the country, and many of them here in Detroit, 2, 4, and 7. 50, 56. But anyway,
a big name people will remember is Amir Makebson.
Amir Makebson,
for years was a great anchor woman.
Shawn Robinson, who was the anchor for Access Hollywood, came out of Detroit. Pat Harvey, number one anchor person in Los Angeles for years, came out of Detroit. Got her first training here. I was the first person to put on a camera in front of a camera. Yeah. So it was exciting, because we had this demand. I mean, we had some syndicated programming, but we had a lot of hours we had to fill with local programming, and we were sometimes churning around the clock. You know what I mean? With the crew doing one program.
As a young man's game.
Oh yeah, it was a lot of fun. A lot of fun. A lot of young people, and a lot of people, just trying ideas. And so
I would think the other struggle then would be advertisers, who are, I would guess, then very uncertain about a black-owned station serving black consumers, even though there's plenty of data to show who's watching, when they're watching, that kind of thing. Was that a struggle? I mean, that must have been a massive struggle.
Well, that's really a sad story, because when the station first went on, a lot of the advertisers had committed to give advertising to WGPR, the auto companies.
Yeah, you got the big three here. Perfect place. Yeah.
And they had... But the station ran into technical problems. They had technical problems right at the very beginning. In the middle of program, it goes black. You know what I mean? And or tape doesn't work right, and that had a lot to do with the inexperienced technical staff, the engineers that were there. And
they weren't scared to advertise or anything. They weren't
scared, but I tell you, when that started happening,
they backed out?
Took flight, yes.
Really?
Oh, yeah. It's like who wants to be associated with that kind of programming? You know what I mean? I mean, it was good programming, but it was, the technical problems that happened,
So GPR, one of the big successes, the scene, the big dance show, compared to Soul Train. Soul Train was out before then, and I remember reading about Soul Train, and one of the successes they had was Don Cornelius knew somebody who was a purchaser for Sears and Roebuck. So he got them on board, and they were like, wow, this show works. Did the scene, was it modeled directly after that? Was that kind of the thing? Did you get Sears and Roebuck on?
Well, no, we never got that. But they did have some of the local Faygo, Pop, and the potato chip companies, and some of the
sure. But they must have seen a response, though, is kind of what I'm getting at.
Yeah, they did. Yeah. But unlike the bigger advertisers, once they turned away, they weren't coming back. You know what I mean?
Oh God,
so that's just
I know that.
That was one of the sad situations. But we struggled on. We found a way. And a lot of the local advertisers came on, and they had a chance to expose their products and so forth. So that's how we survived.
It's fascinating.
How did you deal with things like equipment? Equipment is so expensive. I mean, now people can produce a newspaper, a movie on their iPhone, but back then you're talking about big cameras, huge battery packs. They've got to go into tape decks. I mean, the technical aspect of it is daunting. The expense of it has got to be crippling. And then the inexperience where, there's no shortcuts because every time someone's run into a problem, it's the first time they've run into a problem. I mean, were you just constantly biting your fingernails off, wondering how we're going to make this thing happen?
Well, you're absolutely right. The equipment was terribly expensive. It was like the cameras that we use today cost 10 times more than than what they cost now. I think we were using a TK-47. I think it was an RCA camera. It cost $75,000, which in 1975 was a lot of money. And I'm gonna tell you, that was one of the things that got us in trouble from the point that we were buying new equipment, but we were kind of ahead of the game. We bought some equipment that was not being utilized in the market.
You did video first, right? I thought I heard you say, you did video when most were 16 millimeter.
Yep, that's it. That was a good example, but that worked for us. When everybody else was using 16 millimeter film to produce news, field footage in the news for the news department, we were using video, and which gave us a competitive edge from the point is that, as I think we were talking about before, we go out and shoot. In 30 minutes, we could have it on the air, where the other stations with their 16 millimeter.
They have to process it, right?
The processing and editing process was also time consuming. So, we got on much quicker. But we used one piece of equipment that was, it was terrible for us. It was called a RCA, I can't remember. But it was a machine that you put your commercials on, and you put them in. It was a cartridge-based system as opposed to the reel-to-reel, which was everybody else was using.
Looks like an 8-track tape or something.
Yeah, exactly. So you put that in, and that thing, the bugs were not worked out of that thing, and that gave us so much trouble. Yeah. And that's where the problem came because, of course, the advertisers commercials on these cartridges. So get ready to play their commercials, and they go halfway through, and they go.
That's so frustrating, though.
Yeah, it was kind of sad.
What did you do to keep them on board? I mean, at some point, somebody's got to say, "Hey, man, I can't keep trying. I got to move on. You guys aren't ready for prime time."
Well, we lost a lot of advertisers on that, but there were other advertisers that came on board after that, and so we had a lifeblood, and we changed the way we did some things. We had to reinvent ourselves in some ways. We had to put aside that $200,000. RCA, TK, TR, whatever it was, I can't remember, but we had to put that aside and go to 3/4-inch videotape in order to put the commercials on. So we eventually overcame those problems, many of them, but by the time we overcame them, we had lost a lot of support we had in terms of the advertising community, in terms of the major advertising community. They had turned their backs and they weren't coming back.
This show, the scene modeled after or similar to Soul Train, did you get acts? Like Soul Train?
Oh, yeah.
And were they national? Were they local? What kind of acts did you get?
We got everybody. Everybody that came into town came to WGPR. That if they were an African-American oriented act or performance. And, the thing that was really, really unique about it is because we had the radio station there.
Yeah.
They got a double bang for their buck.
Cross promotion, sure.
Exactly. So, if there was a concert coming in, if there was a play coming in, if there was a book author coming in, we got all of those people.
Did you dance on the scene?
Did I dance?
Yeah.
The scene would have been a total flop.
Did you have friends asking you all the time, like, "Hey, get me in"?
Oh yeah. We got a lot of people.
Party. I mean, that's.
Who were some of your favorite acts? Mike needs a little history, maybe, and what music is.
Stevie Wonder came through Earth, Wind, and
Stevie
Fire.
Wonder. He played the piano.
So, Steven, he
synthesizer a little bit later.
Got the cornrows at him. Yeah, I know Stevie Wonder.
George Clinton and Parliament.
Love him. He was a funk singer.
We got the funk.
With the I thought he was an English politician with the Parliament. You're telling me that's somebody else?
So did you get to hang out with these guys when they came in? Were you like, "I'm gonna take care of this talent. I will get them to where they need to be"?
Well, I know. I mean, I always did.
Yeah.
Because because they were doing the show when is coming back into the studio. We had to bring them in. But in terms of hanging with them outside of that arena, not much. I mean, just sometimes. But
did George Clinton wear a diaper?
someone in the group did.
Well, Bootsy Collins has it. On stage. So
someone always, even to this day, has a diaper on.
They wear a diaper now. No, I don't.
Yeah, now it's out of need, though, right?
It's not an option.
But these were all great people, great talent. I mean, great talent.
Oh,
a lot of people came by. And like I said, that was a great advantage by us having the radio station. What we also had the benefit of is that back in those days, radio was the basis for music success. Mm-hmm. So when artists recorded new albums, they did tours. They did promotional tours. And so they would have to come to the radio station because the radio was a great outlet for them. Mm-hmm. And so we got not only people coming in town for like concerts and that kind of performances, but they came on tours, promotional tours. And, it was one of those things where because we had this influx of talent coming in, we were able to make arrangements with local entertainment venues to bring these people in, and that really created a lot of popularity for things like the scene and so forth. Because we would bring these people to the public, and so it was a good time. It was a really good time.
Was the scene the most popular show?
It was.
It was, okay.
It was, yeah.
Now, so I grew up in Grosse Pointe, where Grosse Pointe Radio started, and I was broke, and even by white Grosse Pointe kids' standards, pretty dorky. But I always would watch the scene.
I'm shocked.
Like, not much has changed, except I live on the other side of Mac now. But I instead of delivering the papers, I write the paper. But I wanted to go on the scene, and I knew it was like, okay, so I'm not a great dancer, can't afford an outfit, and it was. Well, my understanding was that if you want to get on the scene, you had to show up early. You had to wait to get in, almost like going to Studio 54 back in those days. And people would say, okay, you're cool enough to get on. You're cool enough to get on. You're cool enough to get on. And what I had heard was if you want to get on, do not dress all in white because it's just too bland to make the scene. How much of that is myth? How much of that is real?
Let's see now. It was not so discriminatory. With regards to people coming in. If you showed up, as long as we had room for you, you could get on. So we didn't have that. We did ask people to dress in colorful outfits. White was kind of glaring anyway on TV.
Yeah, no, it's tough with the lighting.
Yeah, so it was more for that more so than anything. But but these kids had their own style.
Yeah.
We didn't try to dictate their style. And someone asked, did we try to imitate Soul Train? There was a couple of local TV stations that did dance before the scene. Channel 9 in Canada had a dance show, and then
a lot of accordions on that one.
No, this was
okay.
a dance show. I'm trying to think of what was name. Swinging Time. Swinging Time. Yeah, Swinging Time they had a show there. And there was another one that was on. There was
always American Bandstand too.
Yeah, there was American. They were more like American Bandstand,
Oh yeah, and when I worked in New Hampshire, they had a popular music show. With the old dude wearing a suit and kind of the Brill creamed hair. It's like, okay, kids, we're gonna spin some platters. Like whose dad?
What year was that?
Well, I met the guy who was the host. He did it in like the 50s and the 60s. By then, he had he was pretty square back then, and he'd moved on. But yeah, this was a staple local programming. And one of the things about WGPR that I think really harkened back to TV's origins was a lot of locally produced shows, which you never see here. I mean, I remember PM Magazine on Channel 2, which was a local nightly news magazine. We don't have anything like that. You might get Let It Rip. And
Kelly
maybe,
huge too. Yeah.
Yeah. You might, well, Channel 2 in the mornings has a lot of locally produced stuff, but nobody's making like a show, that's gone.
Yeah. Everybody is doing news, and that's it, and variations of news programming, but they're not doing the kind of variety shows that they did. When I was working at Channel 4, we used to do a show, Oopsie the Clown. You know what I mean?
I remember Oopsie the Clown.
We did a hunting show. We did Michigan Outdoors.
Yeah, that was a huge
Soupy
success.
Sales was a local guy.
Soupy Sales,
He started here before he went back to New York.
Did you bring some of that to GPR? Where you're like, we got to have a kids show. We got to do.
We did have a kids show. We had a show. We had a kid show, and we had a teen show, teen profile. Got kids from all over. Talking about politics and things and that adults were talking.
I don't think people today know how hard that would have been to just pull off a station from scratch in the 70s.
Well, it was hard, I guess. But, like most things that are new and succeed, people who are doing them don't realize they're hard. They're just doing it.
Sure.
They're doing their best, and some of it's good and some of it is questionable.
Are you surprised today? I mean, the landscape has changed so much, but still the ownership by blacks is still very, very low. I mean, you have Byron Allen and then
Byron Allen, man, that dude he's legendary.
Does he have any connection to GPR? I mean, he was born here, but I know he moved when he was a kid.
When he first started his production company, he had we carried some of his programming. He had it in syndication, so I had a chance to meet him and talk with him back in the day. This was back in the 90s.
Okay, when he was transitioning from being a comic to a mogul.
He was always doing his comic thing.
Yeah, he had like a round table with different comedians on there. I mean, very, very sort of low production value, but I mean, and I think it's still on, isn't it?
It's on. You can see it on, I think it's channel 50 or channel 20 in the morning.
Yeah, it's.
But I just wondered, did he ever say to you, like, yeah, I watched that station? I'm trying to think of how old he is. If he would have been around when, he would have been here, I would think.
He's got to be in his 60s, I would think.
Yeah, I don't know. We never really even had that conversation.
He stole your idea.
He was just. I remember him first meeting him in Las Vegas because at the National Programming annual meeting. Yeah. And he was there trying to sell his programming, and I met him and we talked, and he ended up coming to Detroit. And we put some of his programming on. I think we had two, The Entertainer, and there was another program that he had was on.
Huh.
Yeah.
What was your favorite show on GPR?
The Scene.
The Scene, okay.
Yeah, I mean, that was the most popular. That was the most active. It had more legs than anything else, But we did a lot of shows. The news was good, too. I mean, we did a lot of news programming.
How did it differ from, 2, 4, and 7? Like, how did it differ? How did news on GPR differ?
The news, the point of the news was to have a black perspective of the news. You know what I mean? So it was the same news, but oftentimes written a little differently, with a different point of view, looking at a sidebar of the news as opposed to what might be the main story. That kind of thing. It still did the news, and then it had some world news in it too. There were still things happening in Africa. We tried to focus on that, so we tried to not just be local, but we were still basically primarily doing local news and dealing with issues that were the main issues and issues that were important in the black community.
Just a little reminder that you guys are kind of old. I was not yet alive when this station was under its operation. I just wanted to know.
Make us feel old? Jeez.
I just wanted to know, what was like the public perception of the people of Grosse Pointe and the people of Detroit? And if you know, what was the perception of surrounding states and countries about how this station, obviously being the first black-run station in the continental U.S., you said, right?
Yeah, I think there were a couple other states like in Guam,
the islands.
Yeah, so, but right here, where you're going to have a big audience.
And to your point, we believe that WGPR was the first black-owned and operated television station that in the world that was not owned by the government. That the stations in the other communities, there were some in some of the islands and so forth, they were owned by the government. This was the first privately
almost
owned.
like community access or something.
Right, exactly. This was the first privately owned television station. That's what we believe. We've been trying to find if that's so. And every television station that we have been able to find that was on the air prior to WGPR, that was in a black nation for the most part in the community, it was owned by the government.
Okay.
But certainly in the United States, we were the first.
Did you have any sports programming? Because, sports on TV, there were different governing rules as to what teams could be on. And, all that's gone now. Every sporting event is on TV now. But I would just think, that would be a really good way to get programming on a TV station that's kicking off in the 70s.
Well, we had sports programming on, but it was not programming that we produced. We produced sports news. Mm-hmm. We did that. We had news segments in the news, within the news, and we had some news shows. But we got a couple of coups during the life of WGPR, and anytime there were the bowl games,
sure,
and the games, college games, they would be up for bids, and a lot of times we would get the packages, and one year we got the Ms. Lou Sports Networks package, and in it was Michigan State.
Oh.
And they went to the championship that year, and so we got
79.
Yeah, right.
That would have been huge.
It was huge. I mean, we got numbers that we'd never seen, and we made more money than we ever seen in one time. And the thing was really funny about it is that when, of course, nobody thought anything of it when we bought it because that was in September the year before.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So. And we got the rights to it, and so when it came that there was going to be this big game that we were going to be in charge, all the stations came to us trying to buy it from us.
So you got the Magic Bird title game?
No. You know what it was? It wasn't Michigan. It was the Michigan. It wasn't the Michigan State. It was the Michigan.
Oh, it was
game.
Michigan.
It was
76.
This was which bowl game was that?
It was football.
Okay,
it was football. Yes. It wasn't. It was.
So it was a Rose Bowl, maybe.
It wasn't Rose Bowl. It was what bowl was that? But
Blue
anyway,
Bonnet
it
Bowl?
was a bowl game, and Michigan was in it, and people want to. I think it was like 78.
There you go.
Okay,
78.
ML is right. It was the 1981 Blue Bonnet Bowl.
Blue Bonnet Bowl. That's what it was.
Michigan and UCLA.
Yes.
All I know is they probably lost.
No, they won big.
Oh, did
jerk.
they? Okay.
Yeah.
So then it definitely wasn't a Rose
Biases
Bowl.
on the side.
Hey, congratulations to Michigan baseball for winning the men's Big Ten championship.
You sound very
So
sincere.
I just
there.
want to throw that.
I'll
out
accept it. They stole a bid.
But so
insincere.
what were some of the biggest challenges besides the technical stuff? I mean, were there a lot of personalities? I know in TV stations you get a lot of people thinking that they, tough to get those heads through the doorways. I was, of course, the exception there. But Shawn, we had to enlarge the door to get him in here. But when you look back at it,
we call that projecting, Joe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Say the speaker he's the source. Huh?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, exactly.
Well, the biggest challenge was always money.
Yeah.
It was always money. You know what I mean? And of course, as people matured and got that talent and got themselves anchored, they were looking for another opportunity. So when they really started to get good, they were going off to the other stations. You know what I mean? So we had a constant turnover of people. But we knew that. I mean, we accepted that role.
Sure.
And I'm happy to see people go on to do well, But that was a challenge there, just to try to keep good people going, And that was both in front of the camera and behind the cameras, because when those guys learned the production side of things and learned how to operate the cameras and all that.
Sure, I'm sure somebody came and stole them away.
And then
flashed some money and.
Well, of course, what happens is one person would go to Channel 4, and then suddenly they're telling, their former coworkers, hey, there's some opportunity over here. And so next thing you know, you've got 3 or 4 people over there.
How long did it take for the station to turn a profit?
I sometimes wonder if it ever did.
Really?
A real profit. I mean, it was probably all borderline
on
for
paper.
Most of the time. You know what I mean? Because it hired a lot of people, and
sure,
there's a lot of and the revenues were not just that high. But we made it. But yeah.
And then it ends mainly because you tell me if this is right or wrong. When Fox bought the NFL package, that really put a disarray into everything. Because growing up, it was always 2 was CBS, 4 was NBC, 7 was ABC, just like in a lot of major markets in America. And next thing you know, Fox, which was that was channel 50, I believe.
50, yeah.
So now it's like, well, we got this NFL package, we need a better signal. 2 flips, and it's just a domino effect. And CBS was like, we need a frequency, a tower.
You got the story right.
Okay.
And the thing about it, that was a domino effect across the country.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
To stations all over the country flipped to get that NFL package and left a lot of stations out there. In the case of Detroit, CBS, which had been on JBK, was without a home. And instead of what would normally be is that, CBS would come over to Channel 50, which was the former Fox station. Well, 50 had just started the
the
UPN. UPN.
Yeah.
So they couldn't do it. And Channel 20, the other station in the market, had just contracted for the WB on the Warner Brother network.
Oh, wow.
Nobody anticipating all of this, So
that both of those happened before Fox, or 50 must have happened right
they
after.
all happened the same year.
Wow.
They all happened the same year, same time, because.
And so CBS is just going, what are we going to do in Detroit?
Yeah, right.
Really?
So they came to.
Well, they have no leverage then.
Yeah.
So somebody must have got rich off this deal.
Well, I mean, they paid a substantial amount of money to the owners, to International Masons, for the rights to the station.
So it went to the Masons.
Yeah, well, they owned the station.
Did it go to Spencer? Did it go to Joe Spencer?
Yeah, how much trickle down was there?
Exactly. Enough? Not enough.
Joe's microphone.
His silence is very loud. Yeah,
that means some.
Well,
that's good.
The results of that is I ended up working for CBS. That was the trickle
Okay.
down. I became the program director for CBS.
Well, yeah, so touch on that a little bit too. I mean, you have this black-owned station with a lot of black talent that is now bought by a network. Do they come in and just say, "You guys have been doing a great job, but we're the network, so we're going to show you how it's done"? Everybody gets a severance and a handshake.
Okay, the way it happened was really simple. There's a transition time between when they make a deal to buy a station and when the license is actually transferred. So there was like almost a year that WGPR was in charge of the station, but we started putting CBS programming on the station. You know what I mean? So then the primetime programming went to station, and then some of the
like you're an affiliate before
right.
they buy it out. Okay.
Exactly. And so some of the local programming continued, and but with notice that, hey, when the license transfer, you're going to have to find a new place to do what you do. And
really?
Yeah. And so that's what happened, basically. Some of the programming went away. A couple of the programs were actually retained for like a year, even after CBS went on the air. Became controlling of the station. But it was just basically, hey, they bought the station because they wanted to do CBS programming.
And that's it.
That's it,
And what about the staff? I mean, did they all these opportunities for black folks getting into broadcast? Did they keep a lot of people? Or did they say, we're gonna lighten things up a little bit here?
No, because the station had the radio station, some of the people floated into radio, okay, and others went to things like the engineering department and the area, the programming, the traffic department, and so forth. So they did pick up some of the people, but everybody didn't go.
Okay, and looking back on that, I mean, I'm sure with the network resources behind you, you're not worried as much about, is this $200,000 RCA deck that doesn't work? Those worries go away. But do you look back and say, oh man, I kind of wish that this was more like it was, as opposed to a lot of our problems just went away, but we also lost kind of a special opportunity.
Well, from my perspective, I would have loved the station to continue on, but it ran its course. And sadly to say, it did what it did. And when CBS came along, they had the money to do it, and they did what they did. So it was a business opportunity for the Masons, and so they went ahead and did it. And many people had gone on to other careers, so it did what it was supposed to do. As things are. I don't look back in remorse. I look back. I personally was glad to move to CBS, because
sure.
I was a program director. I came in from Channel 4 as a producer and was the executive producer for like 6 years, but for like 14 years, I was the program director, and I had a lot of fun doing programming, but to go into CBS and now have the opportunity to operate at that level, which was a higher level, just no doubt. Yeah. It was good for me, so I was sorry, but I also, it was like it was time. So,
and GPR still is with us. There's a broadcast museum,
right?
And there's an event coming up in September. Tell us a little bit about what's going to happen this fall to get people either schooled up or a trip down memory lane with Channel 62?
Well, let me give you the backstory. Back in 2011, some of the people who had worked at WGPR began a conversation with me and Amir Porter. Her name was Amir Porter when she worked for us. Nat Morris from the scene and some of the other people started talking about, the fact that this was historic and that we shouldn't just let it die, And so we decided to put together what we call the WGPR Historical Society with the idea of retaining and continuing the memory of what the station was. And we had a young lady by the name of Karen Hudson Samuels, who had been our news director, who had really had a fabulous career with Ford Motor Company, was retired, and decided that she would take on the helm of executive director for it. And so we began just trying to have little fundraisers and do things. And we eventually ended up, through her affiliation with the Detroit Historical Museum, putting a community event there. And we had an exhibit at the Detroit Historical Society for like a 60-day presentation in their community gallery. And from that, because we collected all these materials and all this, and footage from back then, photos, stories and so forth, we decided, well, hey, it's over with. We need to do something. So we went to the International Masons, which still had the radio station and still had the building that was there and the studios. We said, hey, how about we build a museum here? And they said, okay.
All right.
And they did the funding, and they funded the building of the studio.
And it also got its historical marker.
Got its historical marker. It's now not only a national historic, a Michigan historical, but it is a national historic site now. But that started the whole thing. So we have been building the museum and building the content for the museum. So we're having a fundraiser coming up in September, with the purpose of doing a couple of things that we really want as we continue to try to build this space out. First of all, we want to build an interactive studio where people can come in. You have an news anchor desk and a weather green board there, and people can come in, read a news script, from a teleprompter, and walk away with a video stick to take home that they can, show that they were on TV. So that's one of the things we want to do. We also want to continue our legacy of training. So we're developing a training program for 12 to 18-year-olds, high schoolers, to give them that introduction into TV production, writing, the different aspects.
Holding that market now.
Yep. And we also we're looking to try to bring, because right now we're an all-volunteer organization, so we're looking to try to bring in some funding so we can have a executive staff.
Sure.
Right, exactly. Get a grant writer to help us continue on, because quite frankly, if International Masons had not come in and put in the money that it took to put this, and it was quite a large investment to get it, it wouldn't have gone any place, But we, through their generosity, we have been able to get it going. But now we want to try to have it stand up on its own legs, And
is there a website or?
Well, yeah.
Is it a Facebook page? I mean, where can people get information?
Well, they can look for it on WGPR Historical History.
Okay.
And we're going to start publicizing it very, very soon. We're starting to make it. It'll be an event that'll happen September 9 and 10. On September 9, we're going to have a youth program where we're going to bring some young people in and have them to meet some celebrities to talk about the world of sports. I should share with you that anchoring this whole event is Stephen A. Smith. He's coming in town.
Awesome.
To be our
ESPN.
ESPN. Stephen A. Smith is coming in to be our keynote speaker for our banquet dinner, which we're going to have on the 10th. But on the 9th, he's going to participate in a youth program. We're going to bring some other sports celebrities in so the youth can talk to him.
I love it.
Man. And so that's going to happen, and we're calling it the legacy event, where we're taking the legacy of WGPR and legacy of some other people and we're celebrating that. Black people in media, because the whole idea, and you all know this, is that, as it was said earlier, there are fewer and fewer black voices in media now, and that there's a real need to have black voices expressing the opinion and point of view of the world, just as everybody else is, And just want to backtrack a little bit, just a little bit. Another thing that the television station, WGPR, had foreign language programming on it. We had Arab programming on it. We had Polish programming on, and we had three different ethnic programs on. And I think it's important for everybody to have a voice, and so, we're raising money for that, to kind of continue that legacy and continue the voice of African Americans in the voice of America. So there will be the youth event on September 9th, which is a Friday, and there will be the banquet. Well, actually, it's going to be a VIP champagne reception at the museum.
Okay.
And then there will be a banquet dinner at the Icon. I don't know if you're familiar with the Icon, but Icon is the facility that General Motors and UAW built. It sits on the river.
Oh, sure. Yeah, not too far from the studios.
Not too far from the studios. Right around the corner, in fact, from the studios. They built that there. So we're going to have the banquet dinner there at the Icon.
Okay.
Good luck.
And is that studio open for regular tours? I mean,
yes. We have tours on Fridays right now because we are all volunteer organization. And most of us still work, including me.
Sure. With a couple of restaurants, in fact. We're going to talk about that. We may be getting a little long, but Shawn doesn't know that much about good food. I usually try to help him out. But
I know nothing. But I'd like to hear.
Okay. But as if television isn't hard enough, you want to get into you do restaurants too. These are very challenging industries.
It is, and really now, especially now.
Yeah.
But I had the good fortune back when I was still working in broadcasting to invest in a restaurant called Louisiana Creole Gumbo.
Nice.
Which is really a historic restaurant in this city now. It's been around since 1970, so it's been serving up gumbos, Creoles, and jambalaya since that time.
Right there on Gratiot and St. Albans.
Yeah. We actually have 3 restaurants. One at Gratiot and St. Albans, which is just on the south side of the Eastern Market. And we have the West one restaurant.
That's the mothership, as Mojo might have said.
Right. And we have one
electrifying Mojo, not the other clown on 95, whatever the hell it is. But.
Yeah. And Mojo's a good guy, too. I talk to him all the time. He's
the original Mojo. Oh, we'd love to have Mojo on sometime if you think he'd come out.
He says he's retired.
Yeah, well, we may have our satellite get in touch with his planet and see if we can beam an invitation out to him.
Yeah. But going back, in terms of the question of can public come out to the museum, we are, as I said, an all-volunteer organization. So, we got to have people there to kind of escort people there. So we're going to move. We were open on Fridays only. Now we're going to be moving to open on Saturdays only.
Okay.
So, make it a little bit more accessible to the general public, being open on Saturdays. So Saturdays, by the end of June, we'll be open every Saturday between noon and 5 o'clock.
Okay, great. And that's right on East Jefferson Avenue. We'll try and get a link to that on our website, which is ML Soul of Detroit. And do you have a website for the restaurants we can share with people?
DetroitGumbo.com.
DetroitGumbo.com.
There you go.
Okay. Thanks for bringing food in it. As if I need more.
Food for thought. Food for thought.
Well, yeah, there you go.
If you want to invite me back to talk about the restaurant, I'll bring some food.
It's very self-serving.
Joe Spencer, former program director for WGPR, keeping the flame lit and still making things happen as a restaurateur. We really appreciate you coming in. Thanks for everything you're doing to help keep this incredibly important institution alive, and it sounds like getting people ready for the next wave of great broadcasters from Detroit.
Well, I thank you so much for allowing me to share the story, and I hope that people will support the museum because we want to continue to train and to do good in the legacy of Dr. Banks and the WGPR Channel 62.
It's right there in the heart of Detroit. So Joe, thanks for coming in, and best of luck, and maybe we'll see you out there in September.
I hope so.
Stephen A.
Good luck!
Oh man, the geeks have inherited the earth.
Did I do that?
What a dork. Him wanting to play with us again mean that he's turning into a geek, or we're turning into cool guys?
So I'd like to offer a note to self here. If you ever write a story about how easy it is to get away with murdering your spouse, don't buy ghost gun parts on eBay, and do your best to make sure that your spouse outlives you, or at least dies a natural death that's above suspicion. That's some wisdom that would have served romance novelist Nancy Brophy very well. A decade after writing a blog post speculating that a wife who kills her spouse must be ruthless and very clever because she is likely to become the prime suspect. Well, Ms. Brophy was recently convicted of killing her husband after prosecutors succeeded in portraying her as the prime suspect and as a duplicitous spouse who spent months quietly plotting the perfect crime and cashing in on lucrative life insurance policies. Ms. Brophy is not a novelist that you know, because I think most of her romance novels have been self-published, but she may not have won many literary awards, but she's won our little honor, which we call Geek of the Week.
I am not having a good day.
Me again.
There's an all-night party in room 7609. And you can dance together all night if you've got the time.
So you may have heard the news that Andy Fletcher of Depeche Mode died last week. He was one of the founders of this iconic new wave band. And so, I'm sure you know Dave Gahan and Martin Gore, and maybe even knew that Vince Clarke was one of the founding members of Depeche Mode. But Andy Fletcher is kind of the forgotten member of Depeche Mode. So I started reading up about Andy Fletcher and was surprised to learn that his contributions to Depeche Mode were mostly on the business side, that he was not one of the creative geniuses, and that while he did contribute some things early on, he's the only member of the group never to have a songwriting credit. But nevertheless, this trip down memory lane with Depeche Mode is our whole excuse for playing their very first single, Dreaming of Me.
Light switch, man switch, film was broken only then. All the night, fuse tomorrow, dancing with a distant friend. Filming and screening, I picture the scene. Filming and dreaming of me. I
Okay, so there's several versions of Dreaming of Me out there. Not all of them end with that little ditty at the end, but that's kind of the Vince Clarke version of Depeche Mode, which is a little more poppy, a little more inconsequential, doesn't have a lot of the darkness that you hear in Depeche Mode once Martin Gore sort of took over primary songwriting responsibilities. But and it always kind of sounds a little bit like one of those, was it a 16-bit video game, whatever?
It did, yeah. It sounded a lot like that.
Anyways, Andy Fletcher, our good friend from Depeche Mode, has passed. He didn't even tell us he was going.
Friend, what are you talking about?
You can't have enough friends. So that's room 7609, where we try and.
Did you like it, Sean?
Yeah, it was fine. What's next?
Here it goes.
He was just tinkling along in his mind. Well, next we're going to thank Frank for putting.
It wasn't George Clinton.
No. Well, hey,
or Sly, or Stevie, but that's okay.
Stevie was just performing at Wayne State. I had some friends of our kids who graduated. And they were saying, "Oh yeah, we went to our graduation. We had this, we had that." And I said, "Oh well, Stevie Wonder was at our graduation." I said, "Okay, you win. You're not going to compete. You're not going to compete with Stevie." Frank was kind enough to donate to support the show. We encourage everybody to make a donation. It helps. And Frank put some money in the bank, and his donation came with this observation: "Please use this to purchase a shoehorn, so the next time Sam Riddle visits, you can squeeze in a few words." And
Sam is a big presence.
I think that's fair to say. And I was listening to another podcast, and they had, these guys tell crazy stories, and they had a very engaging guest who has a lot to say. And they said at the beginning of the show that, it's okay. This is going to be our ADHD episode, because there's not going to be a format. You're not going to be able to follow any sort of plot line because it's just all these one crazy story leads to another crazy story. So if you missed last week's episode, Sam Riddle, when I think about how much we talked to Sam Riddle about, I hope everybody enjoyed that. But when we got done, I thought, boy, there's so much more we could have talked to Sam about. And I think we had him, almost for an hour. So you really.
And now we're talking about him again. So that's great.
So Sam is very happy.
Yeah.
So anyways, Frank, yes, if we
shoehorn will be purchased.
If we have Sam on again, we'll try and get a word in edgewise, but I suspect we will be no more.
No, Mark and I will use the shoehorn on a probably regular basis.
Fair point.
Frank, thanks.
Good point, John.
Mark, when Sean's done bullying,
how do people donate? MLSoloDetroit.com, little donate bar. Just click on that.
Yeah, just bang that little button and away you go. And here's a part of the show that we talked about early on. We're going to get into it with some feedback from Jocelyn, who writes, "Dear ML and Mark," apparently she's only addressing the crucial portions of the brain trust. "May I ask ML a somewhat contentious question about his Sunday column on the Texas school shooting? Well, I'm sure all of them can tell me 21 people died in Uvalde. Do you or any of your 100-plus Free Press colleagues know how many homicides in Detroit year to date?" And then she says about 150. "Can you tell me how many have occurred since your Detroit-raised daughters were born?" Presumably 600,000. "And probably more frightening..."
6,000.
6,000. "And probably more frightening day-to-day than shootings and homicides are psychotic drivers who weave in and out of traffic, blow lights and stop signs, drive high and drink, 75 miles an hour in residential neighborhoods," which, of course, when I was running for city council, the number one issue for people in the neighborhoods is stopping the speeding down their streets. And as much as I love the Charger and the Hellcat and the Challenger, people in Detroit will tell you those Dodges are ruining our neighborhood because they got so much horsepower, and people cannot help opening up that throttle when they're driving down these side streets that are narrow, where kids are out playing, where people are going to pick up their Corville container. So yes, speeding in the neighborhood, huge problem, the greatest danger to the lives
so much
of
so
our neighbors.
certain neighborhoods have even just decided, hey, we're just going to put the speed bump in.
Oh, God, they're terrible, but we're not going to get more cops and we're not going to get people to drive the speed limit. So, yes, we have embraced the speed hump, which, by the way, is different than the speed bump because it's not as high as a speed bump. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah, that's quite a tangent off this person's email.
So Jocelyn goes on to say
Right,
home
Joe?
burglaries, carjacking, sexual assaults, and robberies. My point is exponentially more dangerous day-to-day living in and being raised in a lawless big city than the boogeyman threat of being a victim in a school shooting. Yes, there's a very low percentage that any of our children or loved ones will be killed in a school. I guess my question would be, why should there be any risk whatsoever?
But that's why it's new. That's so shocking.
Well, and I think the question is it something that we have to tolerate? So Jocelyn continues, I don't get why the Free Press, the state's paper of record, obsesses over every national news hysteria du jour, ignores the dysfunction and decline on the city, region, and state. Why and who orders dozens of articles and columns about a shooting 1,600 miles away, while more or less ignoring local violent crime, jaw-dropping number of overdoses and overdose deaths, and overall lawlessness in favor of rah-rah comeback hype? What is the point of a local statewide daily if you just stroke the same hysteric party line as the national news organizations? At this point, it seems the only difference is the sports coverage. I sent this note as a multi-decade subscriber to both dailies and an avid follower of your Soul podcast. God bless. Joy. Well, Joy, I would just tell you, we do cover a lot about overdose. In fact, we have a reporter whose entire raison d'etre is to write about how opioids are destroying communities. We do write about the crimes and the deaths and the risks and the threats to people who live in the city and elsewhere for that matter. But if you read my column, and you can find it at freep.com, and we'll include a link on our website, which is mlsoulofdetroit.com. One of the points I make in there is that we all worry about the safety of our children when they're in school. And it just doesn't seem fair to me that now my daughter wants to become a teacher. I got to worry about her safety in a school again. The good old days seem to be when you had obnoxious kids and overbearing parents. But one of the points in that column, which I hope other folks grasped, is that this notion that Uvalde, Texas is 1,600 miles away. Well, let me tell you something. Oxford's about 45 miles away. And to say this happens somewhere else, what happens here too? And one of the things I wrote about in that column was about going through the active shooter training. The Oakland County Sheriff's Department came to Fox 2 and showed us the training that they do in schools. And as I write in the column, I teared up, not because I was afraid of what I was seeing, but because I thought about a little child going and having Officer Friendly, who used to show us bike safety and how to get a license for a bike, now saying, kids, if somebody comes to your school, they may be trying to kill you, and you need to run, and you need to hide, and you might need to fight. And so this absolute plague that we are encountering may only affect a few people, far too many, but maybe just a few people. But every one of our children who watches this training has now got to go to school with the thought that this may be where I die. And when we send our kids to school, this is where we want them to learn and to grow and to be bullied and picked on and be called nasty names and have their lunch money stolen. I mean, that's just a tradition. It's one that we're not proud of, but that's the way it works. And now when we're sending them there, one of the things they're learning is that they could be murdered and that there are some things they could do that reduce the odds that they may be murdered. And that's something that
if we had fire drills too. I mean, when was the last time a school had a big fire? I mean, it's just about being prepared. But her point.
Yeah, but fire is falls under the shit happens category to me, not nut job.
I know. I'm just saying that.
No, but we regulate and have codes for that too. Buildings used to burn down all the time.
But
cities did.
You're right.
So we've gotten better with that. And
her point, or part of her point is, hey, there's a lot of gun violence. There's a lot of death aside from just this one random asshole loser shooting up a school. I mean, she's not wrong about that. So why can't we take it all together and figure out any solution? Because nothing is being done to stop any of it.
Well, that would be my point. And the larger story. And by the way, is it Jocelyn or she signed it Joy?
Joy, yeah.
So is it Joy?
It's Joy.
Okay.
I think she
I appreciate
by a shorter version, but she wants to bring joy, which you might want to take a cue from.
Okay, thank you. No, I appreciate
gun violence is now the leading cause of death
among kids in the country. Yeah, 4,352 deaths last year.
Unacceptable no matter where it happens. I don't know what the answer is.
Think about that. It's the leading cause of death for kids.
It's fucking insane.
It's guns.
It's insane.
And of course, every time there's a death of a kid in the city, for through gun violence, it makes the news. So it's not being ignored,
Yeah. It's starting to happen so much now, Joe, that I feel like it is starting to get ignored. I think people just go, oh, yeah, another 2 people
It
shot
gets
and killed in
reported.
Detroit.
I mean, the local news does it, or the Free Press and the news. It may be
TV does it more than the
It
print.
may be 6 paragraphs on the local front, and it's not going to be covered the day after unless there's a threshold, which is really cynical of us, but that's where we're at.
Well, I mean, the
And
newspapers.
threshold in terms of numbers of.
The newspapers don't write 150 homicide stories. I mean, we really don't report on the deaths as much as we used to because we're becoming numb to it. And I mean, I know a young kid whose parents own a gun legally and was depressed and thought about shooting themselves. And thankfully they did not. But the fact that that gun was in the house, they could have killed themselves. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have guns. I'm not saying people shouldn't own guns. If you feel like you need one to protect yourself and you follow the rules, that's okay.
Shawn,
but we've got some crazy stuff going on. People are against background checks. People are opposed to trying to take guns back from people who have demonstrated that they are not to be trusted with the weapon.
A large majority of people are behind red flag laws. They are behind closing the gun show loophole. I mean, surveys have shown that.
They want background checks. They want folks to be there's a majority of folks that want guns stored in a safe. In your home.
Most states have that law.
Right.
We do not here, as everybody learned because of the crumbly.
I don't know how many people want open carry.
Well,
I'm just saying.
That's a whole nother. This is the problem with the whole thing.
I actually prefer open carry to CCW because at least I know who's strapped.
It's very nuanced, right? There's so many variables. There's so many things that can be done, but I feel like nothing is being done. And nothing's just not acceptable. You know what the number 2 leading cause of death is, right?
Auto accidents.
Auto accidents. We have done things to lessen auto accidents.
We've made cars, thanks to Ralph Nader, basically,
We've
right?
made them
We've made
safer.
them a whole lot safer.
Speed limits, seatbelt mandatory.
Airbags.
Nobody thinks twice about it now.
The way cars absorb impact, I mean, just the way they're
You
designed,
have to
right?
be trained and licensed to operate.
But automobiles are not in the Constitution.
Because they didn't have them back.
Well, I'm just saying that will be the argument. It's
had
very
powdered
easy for
wigs.
people.
Well, guns not in the
wooden
Constitution either.
Fair, but arms, right?
Right.
And
so what's that mean? That's
Well, that's
completely
why-
open to interpretation. So why don't we interpret the Constitution in a way that protects the society?
I don't know.
I mean, I don't know what that is.
I
I'm
don't
just
know.
saying.
And
it's
yeah,
not
mental
black
health is,
and white,
mental
right?
health is. You know what? The problem is all this will cost money, and nobody wants to spend money in the government. Period.
Well, I think
Full stop.
I think who's going to cost money? It's going to cost politicians money because the gun lobby puts a lot of money in politicians' pockets and manufacturers.
That's
it's a very lucrative business.
And a lot of people want to blame the NRA, but you know what? That's the rules. That's the game. I blame the politicians for not having a spine to say, you know what? I don't want your money.
You're right.
I want to do what my constituents want. The NRA is going to NRA. I mean, that's what they do.
Well,
and that's fine.
They're there to promote the businesses they represent to help them
Totally
make more
fine.
money.
No
and
problem
that's
with
all they're there for, right?
But they'll also evolve, and they have evolved. The NRA used to be an education. It used to be to educate gun owners about what's safe. And
for
proper.
hunting.
And now it's become a lobbying entity, and that's. So my column doesn't talk about taking guns away. It just basically says there's some things that we can explore that reasonable people might want to talk about. And I think, and I probably should have looked.
No, we
this
should
up.
take some guns away.
But-
Seriously.
But we
have before.
Yeah. Listen. There's
We
some
took
people.
Tommy guns away. Sorry.
Well, fully automatics are banned.
We banned them.
Yeah,
I know.
but this
They
guy
have been, and
this guy in Uvalde, didn't he buy 1,600 rounds of ammo when he bought these 2 ARs?
the next day I believe he did.
The next
They
day,
bought
okay,
one gun,
so-
came back and then bought the ammo.
So if you're defending your home with 1,600 rounds, I think you're actually just going to mow your house
he
down.
doesn't have a home.
And a semi-automatic rifle.
Oh yeah, and he shot his grandma in his home.
The
in her
shooter in
face.
Vegas used bump stocks, right?
stocks,
So
yeah,
turned a semi-automatic into an automatic.
Sure.
And those are banned in some spaces or states, right?
I don't know. Are they?
But again,
no idea.
I mean, like Chicago, people talk about Chicago. Chicago has pretty strict gun laws relatively, but the state that's 10 minutes away does not.
Yeah.
So
and you can cross that imaginary state line pretty easily.
Yeah, you don't have to show your passport to go from
it's ludicrous.
Indiana to Illinois.
But that's the counter argument is spray cans are also banned in Chicago, but there's no shortage of graffiti. So, these bans don't work. And I'm not calling
unless they're banned everywhere.
For a ban, I'm calling on, let's start to try and find some things that work. But I think it wasn't legislation passed that forbids this use of federal money on studying gun control or weapons. So we hear people saying it's like, well, there's not enough data out there to say whether this is effective or not, but we're also saying don't spend any money to determine whether this is effective or not.
Oh, that was you're speaking about the NRA. That was an NRA-backed legislation, right?
Sure.
Don't want much science out there. Because the thing of it is, if it becomes a public health issue, then they're sunk. If enough people start thinking about it in terms of a public health issue instead of a don't infringe on my rights, right? It's the classic. It's me as an individual living in a larger society, and where's the balance? And that's what we got to figure out.
Well, I just think we need to have some movement here. And again, the point of my column was not take away guns. I don't think that's going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
No, it won't.
You don't want it. You don't want to take away guns anyway. You don't want to take away all the guns, do you?
I don't think anybody needs an AR-15. Do you?
That's not all the guns, though. Yeah.
No, I know, but or anything like that.
I'm with you, Locke. Well, especially
don't take the guns away to stop making ammunition. I mean, there are ways to do it, right? Stop making ammunition, or stop making ammunition for particular guns, and then eventually it runs out. Australia, and I know that's one of the ideas. We always look at other countries, but they had a horrific school shooting.
Port
right?
Arthur.
Yeah.
Well, it was a school. No, it was like a cafe.
Mall, maybe a mall. But anyway, they decided as a society, okay, we don't want this. And they got rid of the guns that are capable of that.
Well, and they're all licensed, registered and licensed.
Yeah, and they still have guns, and they hunt, and, whatever. I don't know what their hands are.
For a lot of people, it's a tool if you're a rancher.
Yeah, exactly. And they should have guns or access.
So what would they do with all the guns?
What did they do with them?
They bought a lot of them back.
If they said, okay, let's get rid of all the handguns.
It's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen anyway.
No, it won't. It won't.
Detroit has melted them down in the past when Detroit police have done buybacks, but there's also been, God, I remember reading this years ago that when there were guns that were confiscated as part of a criminal investigation, then the police department would go ahead and auction them off later to raise money. I don't think they do that anymore. I think any guns they get are melted down. But yeah, I mean, it's... I think the worst thing we could possibly do is collect all the guns and say, now we're going to ship them off to so-and-so because now we're just...
You have to melt them down,
problems.
But Mark's right. That's not going to happen, right?
And nor should it. I don't know if I don't think it should, but there's got to be more limitations on who can buy these weapons. And I think red flag law, if there's enough of a warning, then hold someone's guns for a while. Because all these people have warnings.
Look, if you can't rent a car until you're 25...
We can't drink till you're 21 either.
No, but a car, right? Because a car's a dangerous thing in a lot of ways. Then you shouldn't be able to own any gun until you're 25. If you want to go out hunting with your pops, that's fine. And it's his rifle and he lets you shoot it, whatever. But owning, I mean, seriously, the insurance companies look at the math and they look at the numbers and they say, we're not going to take the risk to let you at 23 rent a Buick in San Diego. Right.
Well, the counter argument, you can vote and you can die for your country at 18. Sure. So I mean, these dates are somewhat arbitrary, but I do think
they're based on development of the frontal lobe. I mean, that's what they're based on. They're not arbitrary.
There's ownership, but there's no penalty for that owner if the gun falls in the wrong hands. Then who cares who owns it at that point?
Well, let's treat guns like we do property. If I go to Mike's yard beer party and slip because there's too much black label on the ground. I could sue him. I mean, I wouldn't, but you can do that. So why not make the same for guns?
You definitely wouldn't sue me?
Never.
Okay, well, this year's party is July 9th. You're invited.
Never. I would never do that. But no, seriously, we hold people accountable when you're on their
property. If you overserve a customer at a bar, the bartender or the establishment can be held liable for putting somebody...
Same idea.
So
it's a good email. I understand Joy's point. I don't know what the answer is. I just wouldn't mind trying something. We've tried something before in 1994.
And that actually worked.
Yeah.
There's some debate over how effective it was, but certainly limiting the size of these clips. And of course we can modify them, but the thing is that frustrates me with a lot of these arguments over the gun owner rights is we often argue about how reasonable people will react. And yes, you can say that if you want to get a gun, you'll always be able to get a gun. If you want to have something that'll hold this massive amount of ammunition, you can build that or get it on the dark web or do anything like that. There's no arguing that. Where there's a will, there will always be a way. What I would like to see us, just as a starting point, is to find some way to say, can we identify the lazy kooks? Like this kid, he bought a gun, he bought a shitload of ammo, pops granny, and then goes into this school and goes berserk.
Well, yeah,
this guy does not feel to me like a world beater.
He was cutting his face.
Right.
He was doing a lot of worrisome things. He also killed animals.
Sure, but I'm just saying that if we made it a little harder for this guy, I got a feeling this go-getter is just going to say, well, you know what, I'll just be an asshole as opposed to be a murderer. And I think if we have some training and the training is legitimate, if I'm an instructor and I'm watching this kid for a couple afternoons, or I'm like, oh my God, we've got to make sure that this wacko does not leave the class with a gun and
Red
can
flag
call
laws,
somebody.
right?
Right.
That's why most people.
It doesn't feel to me like you have to spend a lot of time with this guy to realize, okay, some people really need guns. My man here, not one of them. And Graham agrees.
And if they're in a safe and they're locked up and the parents or the owner is held responsible if the kid or somebody else gets that gun, which is what's happening with Oxford, right?
Yep, 100%.
Then maybe that would help some too.
Well, kids can get into safes, but the problem in Oxford...
You make it harder.
You do.
But your point you were just saying.
You make it like your own life or death, your own freedom.
Sure, but the thing in Oxford
if somebody comes and gets your gun.
The thing in Oxford, they said, my kid's messed up. Here's a gun for Christmas. I hope you feel better.
Yeah, no.
That's not the same thing as, I forgot to put the gat in the box.
No, I understand, but if you do that, make that, you can do time for looking at your phone and running a stop sign and hitting somebody. You didn't intend anything. It was an accident. Or turning if people still listen to the radio, I don't know, but turning the volume up in your car. Maybe you do that on your steering wheel and you look down and boom, you run into somebody. You can do time for that if that person's seriously hurt.
It's just a little bit different though, because one of those is an accident and the other ones are clearly intentional. And
I'm
he's
saying,
talking about the parents.
I'm talking about the parents or the gun. If somebody gets a gun out of your house and commits a crime with it, if you make that person culpable, like we do with a lot of other things that are accidental, maybe there's more motivation. I don't know.
Just try something.
Then would you also punish the parents? Say if a teenager, turning up the volume accidentally hits someone, but would you still hold the parents responsible just because it was their car?
That's a good question.
If they're driving it, they are responsible, aren't they? Yeah.
Well, if they sent the kid a text that says, hey, crank up the jams, then I might. But I think we're talking about some extreme cases here. But,
it's just always easier for one side to go, no.
This is happening more and more often. It's happening closer to home. And again, I didn't make this point explicitly because it seemed to me that it spoke for itself, but all of our children are being traumatized. But in the same way that kids in a neighborhood where there's a lot of violence may not become a victim of violence, may not participate in violence, but they are also victims of the violence because they know. There was a piece on all the school shootings in Chicago, a big series that NPR did, and one of the things they were asking kids is, why are you always walking the street? What the hell are you doing walking in the street on your way home from school? That's more dangerous. You could get hit by a car. And they're like, it's also harder for somebody to single me out because I'm walking in the street. I was like, what?
That's awful.
I mean, so there's all kinds of ways that our kids are being affected by this. And this latest shooting just hit me particularly hard because, if I was Jewish and the mosque shooting the synagogue shooting had happened in Pittsburgh, I'd be very leery about going to a synagogue. If I was a Korean American Christian, I'd be very worried about what happened in California. If I was black, I'd be very worried about what happened in Buffalo. I happen to worry about all of those things, but these things happen so much that it's getting to a point now where it's like, you can check a lot of boxes and put yourself in a very small category, but it turns out you actually may match up pretty closely to one of these massacres because there's one for every shape, size,
Well, and you were thinking about your
race,
daughter,
and creed.
right, in your column. And my son is a year behind you from the same school, going into the exact same profession, right? When we talk about this all the time too. The last thing I'd like to say is there was a detective show in England, and I don't remember the name of it, but it was all about tracing. It was about one gun that ended up being part of a crime. And there were several shows that were about finding that gun and tracing it. And the reason they could do it is because that's how it's documented from the minute it leaves the manufacturer. It's just a completely different way of tracking and looking and thinking about a gun. You can still get a gun, but it's thought of differently culturally. And it's that kind of, a TV series like that wouldn't even make sense here. Really? Oh, you're going to go track that gun?
They also solve every crime if you watch British police procedurals with closed circuit television, because everybody is recorded.
They're on camera, and that's
the minute they leave their house. Every one of those shows ends like, what's the CCTV say? Oh, we got him walking out of there.
London is the most filmed city in the world, right? So that's a different, they're trade-offs for sure.
So I guess all I'm saying is, if your defense is the way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun, and you're counting on my daughter to be that good guy with a gun, you're all screwed. In the same way that in Buffalo, the security guard was a former police officer who was a security guard. That is the quintessential good guy with a gun. But it turns out the bad guy with the gun also had body armor because he's prepared to meet a good guy.
He held them off for how long? Right. And I don't blame those folks in some way for not going in there. Or wait until the SWAT folks, or wait until the properly trained folks come.
Wait a sec. Are you talking about the police in Uvalde?
Yeah.
Oh, bullshit. They just had training in March.
You know
it's
what?
An active shooter situation.
Human nature is you make $30,000 a year, and you're going in, and you've never seen somebody shooting out like that, and you don't know what's going to kick in.
I get it. Police are horribly underpaid, and there's just not enough of them.
And all of a sudden, it's real. You know, it's not the training that Marines get to go to war.
But that's the job.
Well, whether they should have
what else? They're supposed to have an armed security person at that school, and he wasn't there that day.
Well, he drove past the guy.
He drove past the guy once he was going in.
Yeah,
but he wasn't there.
It's a little different when you're walking in, and they got shot at, right?
Yeah, a couple guys got grazed.
The door was supposed to be shut and locked too, but a teacher propped it open. I mean, there's always.
And if you're used to doing traffic stops, and all of a sudden you're walking into a school and you're getting grazed, and the SWAT people are coming, I'm just saying that's human nature.
I understand the human nature part of it. I really do. But all of them, it
was not great that they couldn't get in there sooner. Absolutely,
it's an insane job to be an officer.
This just makes the point that all the solutions we've been offered. Hardening schools. Well, somebody left the door open, and they're always going to leave a door open. We have to have a cop on the facility. Well, if it's a big school, the cop's on the other side of the building. What the hell?
And what's he armed with, by the way?
To take
that
a
cop.
powder. Right.
Taser.
Well, if anything, it should.
And then we have to have police. I have to believe Uvalde is a small town where the cops got there pretty fast.
They did.
But then they chilled out for an hour trying to figure out, okay, which way is up? All of which is not to condemn anybody for their response. It's all just to say that a lot of these solutions that have been proposed, we've now seen real life examples where they don't.
So let's try something else.
Work.
Exactly.
And I don't want to take guns away from responsible people who deserve to have them and will do their best to be good citizens.
Same here.
But we got to do something in the same way that when you crack a pistachio, you want to keep the nut away from the okay, that didn't work.
Terrible.
No. So just
save me.
No, keep going.
Just speak.
This is where Joe at Channel 62 would have put up the sign that says "Programming is." We'll be right back after this.
You use your allotment of analogies with the Jewish folks in Pittsburgh. So no, just speak. You don't need analogies. Stick your neck out there.
I'm just saying we can separate. We can separate some of the folks who shouldn't have guns from the folks who are certainly entitled to have them.
Okay.
We all agree.
And that's your geek of the... No, okay, we already did that. Sorry. So,
if you still want, you have Daniel's response before we wrap.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, sorry, I forgot. Daniel sends this missive under the subject line, nope, not going to listen. Sam Riddle wants to represent our community after he and Monica Conyers sold our city out over the toxic injection well license. And no way. Mm-hmm. Yes, Sam takes ownership for his transgressions, unlike a lot of pals or a lot of people who make mistakes and then say, well, it's everybody else's fault. But so Daniel, I'm sorry you didn't listen to last week's episode. I thought it was a pretty good one. If anybody else would like to listen to it, you can find it at our website, mlsoulofdetroit.com. Anywhere quality podcasting and our show is found. And of course, you can watch the replay at YouTube channel ML Elric. Please subscribe, because that way our irregular start times will no longer be an issue, because when we get going, you will get a little notification. And Patrick, you said they got to hit the bell when they subscribe.
Yeah, so subscribe and hit the bell just so you get notified every time a video has been posted on YouTube, and leave a like for the YouTube algorithm.
Yep, and please like it.
Smart young people.
Algorithms are the worst.
Where would we be?
That's what's ruining society.
Comments are great too. If you're following us on Twitter at Elric or on Facebook ML Elric, if you throw a comment, that helps us get the artificial intelligence that Mark Zuckerberg said was going to save the Republic to work in our advantage. And before we get going, Patrick, I couldn't help noticing that you are grievously injured.
Oh yeah, so. I actually just went to the doctor right after the show last week, and I told him that for like the last year and a half, my wrist has been hurting on and off, and they did an x-ray. There was nothing broken, but they put me in this brace, and then they sent me to another doctor.
Girl.
Yeah.
Actually,
I was waiting for that. I'm sorry, Patrick. Oh, my God.
I actually originally heard it at a boxing gym about a week and a half after my ex-girlfriend and I broke up. My friend felt bad for me. She was like, hey, I could get you into this boxing class because she worked there. But she didn't tell me that it was the advanced class and not the beginner's class. And I didn't know how to do any boxing. The instructor was just telling me a bunch of terms that seemed like nonsense to me. You know, give me a triple McTwisty uppercut into the hook curve, whatever. And so I had no idea what he was saying. So I just punched the bag as hard as I could, trying to do it like the people standing next to me. Maybe after only 5 minutes, my wrist already had pretty much given out. But there was still like 40 minutes left of the class, and I didn't want to seem like a wuss. So I just kept going. And by the end of it, my wrist was... By the end of it, I was just completely out of it. And
did you do that in the 70s? Joe,
I'm sure they had
so much for your boxing class solution, Mark.
Yeah,
you know, if you'd had a gun, you could have just shot that bag.
Yeah, that probably would be a smarter solution.
Wait, but I want to go back.
What solution was that?
Yeah, no, that just came in over the internet. I just read that.
I want to go back. You broke up with a girl, and then your friend, who's a female, said, "I'll get you in a boxing class." Is she single? Is she not single? Couldn't you just take her out?
No, she's not single, but she's hot as hell, man.
Well, okay. I mean, that can help get over the pain of bringing to be young.
No, she's like dating an MSU athlete now, so I think I might have missed my opportunity there. But
that's all right.
You never know.
Good, he didn't have a gun.
Fingers crossed.
That's right. That's right.
That's right.
Yeah, I went to
the final word from Joe. I love it.
He deserves it.
So thank Patrick. We hope you'll be feeling better soon.
Take care of that wrist, Patrick.
Will do.
Joe Spencer, thanks for coming in. Yes. We'll see you at WGPR either at the museum or for the big event in September 9th and 10th. Stephen A. Smith coming to town. We'll get more information to you about that. And, of course, if you want to know what Joe's cooking, you can go to DetroitGumbo.com and check out one of his 3 restaurants. So I think
good eating.
Good eating. So I think that's it for this week. Mark, anything else?
I got nothing.
Shawn and Carlos podcast. What's the hot topic this week?
The Lions, as always, and Cyrus.
Why don't you guys just call it the Lions podcast?
Yeah, the Lions. The Tigers, they've actually won a couple in a row, so yeah.
So you're just doing shows about cats?
The cats, big cats, little cats, you know. I guess tigers are big cats too.
Pussy.
House cats. Pussy cats.
There you go. All right. Well, at least
pussy cats. How did Sean Connery used to say it? Yeah.
At least the hitters are pussy cats. So until next week, we're going to turn to our friend Cyrus to take us out.
Can you dig that?
Can you dig it? Can you dig it?
Now, I got 3 guys out here that would love to cut your tongue out, but I don't want them to do that.
ML Elric
is a two-bit little punk who should never have stuck his nose where it didn't belong.
Hi, what's your name?
Mark.
This community means about as much to me as a festering bowl of dog snot.
I don't know.
I'm your worst nightmare. The soul of Detroit.